The phone buzzed at exactly 2:47 in the morning, jerking me from sleep. An unknown number. My military instincts kicked in before my mind could fully wake. Nothing good comes at this hour. Briggs? I answered, voice already steady despite the hour. Major Grayson Briggs? The voice was formal, official. My stomach tightened. Speaking. This is Lieutenant Colonel Harrow. I regret to inform you that your brother, Landon Briggs, has been involved in a fatal training accident. The words hung in the air like smoke. My brother, dead? My mind flashed back to 3 days earlier. Rain pelted the windshield as I navigated the back roads outside of town. 3 years in Afghanistan hadn't prepared me for the eerie feeling of being back on American soil. Everything felt too clean, too quiet. The encrypted coordinates Landon had sent led me to an abandoned fish packing plant, typical of my paranoid younger brother. I found him inside, leaning against a rusty table, his Navy SEAL stance unmistakable even in civilian clothes. When he saw me, his face split into that familiar grin. "Grayson," he said, wrapping me in a bear hug that smelled of gunpowder and that cologne he'd worn since high school. "Welcome home, Major." "Good to see you too, little brother," I replied, pulling back to examine him. Same sharp blue eyes, same stubborn jawline. But something was different. Tension lines around his mouth, shadows under his eyes. "What's with the cloak and dagger routine?" Landon's smile faded. He glanced toward the windows before pulling a USB drive from his pocket. "I've been working on something big. $300 million military contract with serious irregularities." His voice dropped. "The kind of irregularities that get people killed." "You're investigating corruption?" I asked, following him as he paced the room. "Was. Until I started getting warnings." He stopped, turning to face me. "Not the official kind. The kind that show up as brake failures and near misses with unmarked vehicles." The hairs on my neck stood up. I'd seen enough combat to recognize the look in his eyes. It wasn't paranoia if they were really after you. "What's on the drive?" I nodded toward his hand. "Everything. Paper trails, offshore accounts, tampered equipment specs that failed in the field." His knuckles whitened around the drive. 15 soldiers died because of this, Grayson. 15 families told their loved ones died in unfortunate incidents. Sound familiar? It did. Too familiar. Landon pressed the drive into my palm. "This is a copy. I've encrypted another set elsewhere. If anything happens." "Nothing's going to happen," I cut him off. His eyes held mine. "If anything happens to me, promise you'll finish this." "Landon. Promise me." The intensity in his voice stopped my protest cold. We'd made promises to each other since we were kids. Sacred vows between brothers that neither of us had ever broken. This one felt different, heavier. "I promise," I said finally. "But you're being careful, right?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small key. "There's a storage unit. Combination lock, code is Mom's birthday backwards. Inside you'll find everything you need if..." He didn't finish the sentence. "Tell me who's threatening you. Let me help." Landon shook his head. "Not yet. I need to be certain." He gripped my shoulder. "Just remember our code. Trust no one, not even shadows." Rain drummed harder on the roof as we clasped hands, an unspoken pact between us. I should have said more. Should have demanded names, details, forced him to let me intervene. Instead, I watched him disappear into the rain, the drive heavy in my pocket. "Major Briggs? Are you still there?" Lieutenant Colonel Harrow's voice pulled me back to the present. "What kind of accident?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Equipment malfunction during night dive training. The report indicates he missed a safety check." The lie tasted bitter even secondhand. Landon missing a safety check was like the sun forgetting to rise. He was too experienced, too meticulous. "I'll need to see the body," I said, already calculating my next moves. Pause. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. Due to the nature of the recovery, the family has been advised that a closed casket is recommended." "Of course. A conveniently unidentifiable body." "I understand," I lied. "Thank you for the notification." I ended the call and sat motionless in the dark. The USB drive and key sat in my bedside drawer, suddenly the most dangerous objects in my possession. Landon had known. He prepared for this. Blood pounded in my ears as I made a silent vow to my brother. Whoever did this would pay. The pact between us was now sealed in blood, his blood, and I would honor it. The hunt would begin at dawn. The funeral home reeked of artificial flowers and whispered condolences. I tugged at my dress uniform collar, feeling like an imposter among the sea of black suits and military dress. The closed mahogany casket sat at the front of the room like a prop in a badly written play. Was my brother even in there? Colonel Jameson approached, his handshake firm but his eyes never quite meeting mine. Major Briggs, on behalf of Naval Special Warfare Command, please accept our deepest sympathies. Thank you, sir. Landon spoke highly of your leadership. A lot. Landon had never mentioned Jameson. He was one of our finest. A terrible accident. Jameson cleared his throat. If there's anything you need. Actually, I'd like to see the accident report. His expression froze momentarily. Of course. I'll have my aide get that to you. Though I should warn you, these technical diving incidents can be disturbing to civilians. I'm hardly a civilian, Colonel. Before he could respond, a soft sob interrupted us. Vanessa, Landon's wife of 3 years, approached in a designer black dress that hugged her figure too perfectly for genuine grief. Her makeup was flawless despite the tissue she dabbed at dry eyes. Grayson, she whispered, embracing me with a cloud of expensive perfume. He loved you so much. I returned the hug stiffly. And you? Her wedding ring caught the light, a new one, I noticed, larger than the modest band Landon had saved for months to buy her. Strange time for an upgrade. Landon would be touched by how many came to honor him, she said, gesturing around the room. I followed her gaze, cataloging faces. Most were military Landon's colleagues and superiors. My attention snagged on a tall man in the corner. Dark hair, athletic build, watching Vanessa with an intensity that transcended professional concern. Who's that? I asked casually. Vanessa's hand tightened on my arm. Derek Kane. They work together. He's been so supportive since, you know. Derek caught us looking and approached with measured steps. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Major Briggs. I've heard a lot about you. Landon was like a brother to me too. Something in his phrasing raised my hackles. Was like a brother. Past tense so quickly adopted. Funny Landon never mentioned you. Derek's smile didn't waver. We kept our work compartmentalized. You understand. The reception wore on, a blur of faces and platitudes. I stationed myself near the refreshments, watching Vanessa work the room. For someone devastated by loss, she moved with remarkable composure, accepting condolences with practiced grace. No breakdown, no moment of overwhelming grief. Just perfect, controlled sorrow. As the crowd thinned, I slipped out to the hallway for air. A service door was propped open, voices drifting from beyond. All according to plan. Vanessa's voice, all fragility gone. No one suspects anything. I froze, pressing against the wall. The insurance company called. A male voice, Derek's. They're expediting the $5 million payout given the circumstances. Good. Morbid as it is, military deaths get priority treatment. A small laugh. We just need to keep his brother from asking too many questions. Is he a problem? Grayson? No. He'll be gone in a few days. Back to playing hero in some desert. I slipped away before they could exit, my mind racing. $5 million in life insurance that I'd never heard Landon mention. A policy large enough to raise eyebrows. After the reception, Landon's attorney, Milton Reeves, caught me in the parking lot. Major Briggs, a word? I should inform you about your brother's estate. Was there a recent change? I asked, already knowing the answer. Milton looked surprised. Yes, actually. 2 weeks ago, Landon transferred all assets to Vanessa. The house, investments, and named her sole beneficiary of his insurance policy. Rather standard for military personnel before high-risk missions. Except Landon wasn't on a high-risk mission. He was investigating corruption. And he'd sent me insurance of a different kind, the flash drive. When is the reading of the will? Tomorrow 10 a.m. Though I should manage expectations, there's nothing for anyone but Mrs. Briggs. I nodded, watching Vanessa across the lot. Derek stood too close, his hand brushing hers when he thought no one was looking. They shared a glance that confirmed everything. I understand completely, I said. That night in my hotel room, I plugged Landon's drive into my laptop. Password protected. I tried our childhood dog's name, our mother's birthday, our father's badge number. Nothing worked. I stared at the prompt, hearing Landon's voice in my head. Trust no one, not even shadows. Shadows. Our code word from childhood games, when we'd communicate in our made-up language. I typed, no trust in shadows. The drive unlocked, revealing dozens of encrypted files. As I began browsing, my military phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stop digging if you want to stay alive. Your brother made his choice. I switched off the phone and continued reading. Landon had made his choice all right. And now I was making mine. Dawn found me booking an extended stay at the hotel. I wasn't leaving town until I found who killed my brother. And from the looks of it, I wouldn't have to search far. Landon's apartment building sat nestled between a coffee shop and a boutique gym in the upscale part of town. I waited until midnight before approaching from the service alley. The emergency exit looked ordinary to anyone passing by, but Landon and I had installed a secondary lock mechanism 3 years ago during my last leave, our private entrance, key to our fingerprints. Paranoid planning pays off, little brother, I whispered as the hidden scanner recognized my print and the door clicked open. Inside, the apartment was immaculate, too immaculate. Someone had cleaned thoroughly, removing personal traces. Photographs were arranged with surgical precision on shelves. Landon's desk looked untouched, a theater set rather than a workspace. I moved silently through rooms bathed in streetlight glow, searching for what others might have missed. In the guest bedroom, I knelt beside the vent near the baseboard, the one we'd modified years ago. 3 gentle taps in our childhood rhythm, followed by a quarter turn counterclockwise. The false grate swung open, revealing our private safe. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, a stack of photographs, and a waterproof pouch containing documents. I spread them on the floor, heart pounding. The photographs showed Vanessa and Derek at restaurants, parks, hotel entrances, clearly more than colleagues. Dates stamped in the corner stretched back 18 months. But it was the third figure in several photos that caught my attention. An older man in expensive suits, meeting them in secluded locations. His face remained partially obscured in most shots, but his bearing screamed authority and wealth. The journal entries were in Landon's precise handwriting. March 15th, server breach detected. Security protocols compromised. VD and KM involved. Offshore transfers tracked through Singapore. April 3rd, Project Chimera documentation secured. Evidence of testing failures suppressed. 15 casualties unreported. April 10th, someone accessed my secure server. VD and KM implicated. Trust not even shadows. The last entry chilled me. Dated 3 days before our meeting. 3 days before he gave me the drive. I flipped through financial documents, receipts for wire transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Vanessa's signature on several forms. Amounts totaling over $1 million. What did you get yourself into, Landon? I muttered. The floor creaked beneath the bedroom carpet. Another of our modifications. I pulled back the edge, revealing a hidden compartment containing surveillance equipment, high-end microphones, cameras, tracking devices. Military grade. Beneath them lay a sealed envelope with my name. Inside was a single page with Landon's handwriting. Grayson, if you're reading this, I'm already dead. Follow the money through Singapore. Look for Project Chimera. Kevin Mortimer is the key defense contractor with government connections. He's been working with Derek Kane for years. And Vanessa. The safe house in Montana is still secure. Code unchanged. Finish what I started. Oh. A sound from the hallway froze me in place. The elevator had stopped on this floor. Footsteps approached. 2 people, one heavier than the other. I quickly returned everything to the safe except the letter and photos, which I tucked inside my jacket. The lock jiggled. I slipped into the kitchen as the front door opened. I'm telling you, we need to search again. Derek's voice. If Landon kept records, they could be anywhere. We've been through everything twice. Vanessa sounded irritated. There's nothing here. I pressed against the wall beside the refrigerator, calculating escape routes. His brother was at the lawyer's office asking questions today. Derek's voice tightened. Mortimer's getting nervous. Mortimer's always nervous, Vanessa scoffed. What's Grayson going to find? We've been careful. Landon wasn't stupid. He wouldn't go after Chimera without insurance. They moved into the living room. I eased toward the balcony door. The flash drive is gone, Vanessa said. Probably destroyed in the accident. Stop worrying. And if it wasn't? If he made copies? Then we find them before his brother does. I slipped onto the balcony as they entered the bedroom. 14 floors up meant no quick exit that way. I'd have to wait them out. Check the vents again, Derek ordered. My pulse quickened. They knew about some of our hiding places but not the mechanism. Still, I couldn't risk them finding it. This is pointless, Vanessa complained. We should focus on keeping Grayson from. A cell phone rang. Derek answered, his voice immediately deferential. Yes, sir. No, nothing yet. Yes, Mr. Mortimer. Of course, sir. Mortimer. KM from Landon's notes. I committed the name to memory as Derek ended the call. We need to go. Mortimer wants to meet now. At midnight? What's so urgent? He didn't say. Just that it's about Project Chimera. Their voices faded as they left. I waited 10 minutes before returning inside, retrieving the surveillance equipment from the hiding place. I'd need it for what came next. As I prepared to leave, a framed photo on the mantel caught my eye, Landon and me fishing in Montana years ago. I turned it over, finding the expected note taped to the back. Safe house still secure. Chimera files in the tackle box. Even in death, my brother was helping me hunt his killers. Outside, I noticed a sedan parked across the street, a man watching the building entrance. I wasn't the only one searching for answers tonight. The makeup artist studio was tucked away in a forgotten industrial complex that had once served as a film set. Marta Rodriguez had worked on major Hollywood productions before retiring to private commissions. Her euphemism for less than mainstream clientele who valued discretion. "You sure about this?" she asked, measuring my facial contours with calipers. Her workspace smelled of latex, silicone, and the menthol cigarettes she chain-smoked. Creating a replica of a dead man isn't exactly my typical Thursday afternoon request. I placed Landon's military ID on her workbench. He was my brother. We shared 97% facial similarity. Identical twins separated by 3 years. Marta studied the photo, then my face. "That helps, but this level of work isn't cheap." I placed a stack of cash beside the ID. "Will this cover materials and discretion?" She counted quickly, nodded. "Sit down. This will take hours." While Marta worked, molding silicone and crafting a perfect replica of Landon's face, I reviewed what I'd pieced together. Kevin Mortimer, defense contractor. Project Chimera, something worth killing for. Vanessa and Derek, lovers and co-conspirators. A paper trail leading through Singapore. And 15 casualties, soldiers who died because of whatever Landon had uncovered. "Stop clenching your jaw," Marta scolded, applying another layer to the mold. "Unless you want your brother to look constipated." For hours later, I studied my reflection. Landon stared back at me, identical down to the tiny scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood bike accident. The slight cleft in his chin. Even the pattern of stubble. The prosthetic is waterproof, sweat-resistant, and should last 48 hours before needing reapplication, Marta explained, packing supplies into a case. The adhesive is military-grade, ironic, considering. Voice modulation will be up to you. It's perfect. I paid her the remainder agreed upon. This meeting never happened. What meeting? She winked, closing her studio door behind me. The following morning, I visited a hardware store as an unremarkable middle-aged plumber named Earl, complete with overalls and tool belt. The clerk barely glanced at me as I purchased specialized equipment that would raise eyebrows in any other context. An hour later, Earl was installing new fixtures in Vanessa's master bathroom, courtesy of a service call she never made but her building manager confirmed. While she was out, I meticulously placed surveillance devices throughout her penthouse. Tiny cameras and smoke detectors. Microphones behind outlet covers. A keylogger on her laptop. All feeding to secure cloud storage I could access remotely. That evening in my hotel room, I watched Vanessa return home, kick off designer heels and immediately pour a whiskey. Not the behavior of a grieving widow. Her phone rang less than an hour later. "Derek, finally," she answered. "Did you meet with him?" Through my carefully placed microphones, I heard both sides of the conversation. "He's getting paranoid," Derek replied. "Wants to accelerate the timeline. The insurance company is still reviewing. Damn bureaucracy. We don't need to wait. Mortimer's paying the second half once Chimera is secured. $5 million from him plus $5 million from insurance. More than enough to disappear." Vanessa laughed, a sound I'd never heard during my visits with Landon. Cold, calculated. $10 million certainly smooths over any guilt about being a widow. "You were never really his wife anyway," Derek said. "That was just the job. A 3-year assignment I'm ready to complete. Have you checked on his brother? Grayson's still in town, asking questions at Landon's office. Nothing concerning yet." I made notes as they spoke, then switched to my laptop to research Kevin Mortimer. A prominent defense contractor with political connections, his company, Mortimer Advanced Defense Systems, had secured a $300 million contract for next-generation tactical drones last year. The same contract Landon had been investigating. Public records showed Mortimer had donated heavily to key congressional committee members before the contract award. His company had undergone 3 name changes in a decade, absorbing smaller firms with valuable patents. And his corporate biography conveniently omitted his early career connections to certain foreign governments. I pulled up Project Chimera references, finding only redacted documents and vague mentions in military publications. Something about autonomous response systems and calculated engagement protocols. Military jargon for killing machines that made their own decisions. My phone buzzed with an alert from one of my surveillance devices. Vanessa was receiving a visitor. I switched back to the video feed in time to see Derek arrive with champagne. "To new beginnings," he toasted, kissing her in a way that confirmed their relationship was far from professional. As they moved toward the bedroom, I noticed Derek place a folder on the coffee table. The label clearly visible, Chimera Phase 2. I needed that folder. And I needed them afraid, off balance and making mistakes. Looking at my reflection, at Landon's face, a plan began forming. They believed they'd killed my brother. What better way to unravel them than to make them see his ghost? I picked up the specialized voice modulator I'd acquired, practicing until Landon's slightly deeper timbre emerged from my lips. "Hello, Vanessa," I said in his voice. "Miss me?" "Perfect. The haunting would begin tomorrow." The flower shop was just opening when I arrived, my baseball cap pulled low. I ordered a dozen white lilies, Landon's traditional gift to Vanessa on their anniversary. "Card?" the florist asked, pen poised. "Yes. Please write, 'The greatest treason is betrayal of trust. Forever watching L.'" It was one of Landon's favorite quotes about loyalty, often repeated during our childhood. I paid cash and requested immediate delivery to Vanessa's penthouse. Next, I accessed Vanessa's smart home system through a backdoor I'd installed yesterday. Military-grade hacking tools had their advantages. By 10 a.m., I'd programmed her lights to flicker at precisely 2:47 a.m., the time Landon supposedly died. Her digital thermostat would drop to cold at random intervals. Small disturbances to start the psychological warfare. From my hotel room, I monitored the surveillance feeds. At 11:30, the flowers arrived. The delivery man handed them to a confused Vanessa, who read the card with widening eyes. Her hand trembled as she dropped the card, backing away from the flowers as if they might bite. She immediately called Derek. "Someone sent flowers from Landon," she said, voice pitched higher than normal. They quoted his favorite saying about betrayal. "Probably his brother," Derek replied, though uncertainty tinged his voice. "He's trying to rattle you." How would Grayson know about Landon's flower preferences or his quotes? Brothers talk. Don't let him get to you. But she already was rattled. She paced her apartment, checking window locks, peering into corners. The seed of fear had been planted. While Vanessa stewed in paranoia, I drove to the marina where Derek kept his boat. Public records showed he'd purchased a 36-foot yacht last year, far beyond a military salary unless supplemented by corruption. The marina security was minimal, designed to keep out casual trespassers rather than someone with my training. I boarded his boat wearing deck shoes that left no distinct prints. The cabin was unlocked, typical overconfidence. Inside, I planted 3 small surveillance devices before noticing a leather planner on the navigation table. I photographed every page with my phone. Meeting dates, coordinates, and one name that appeared repeatedly, Cam Doc Rendezvous. Before leaving, I placed one final touch, a small military challenge coin identical to one Landon always carried, positioned prominently on the captain's chair. A ghost's calling card. Back at my hotel, I reviewed the photos from Derek's planner. One entry stood out, a meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening at a private dock section with KM and coordinates that matched an isolated cove 20 miles north. Perfect timing for phase 2 of my haunting. I spent the afternoon watching Vanessa through the surveillance system. She'd called a locksmith to change her locks and had swept the apartment for bugs, missing all of mine. Professional-grade equipment had its advantages over consumer-level sweepers. As evening approached, I donned Landon's face and an outfit identical to one he'd worn in recent photos. The transformation was uncanny, even I felt unsettled looking in the mirror. I drove to a coffee shop across from Vanessa's building and waited, watching through binoculars as she prepared for an evening out. At 8:15 she emerged wearing a black cocktail dress, hair styled elegantly, hardly morning attire. I followed her taxi at a distance as it headed toward the Harbor District. The vehicle stopped outside an upscale restaurant overlooking the water, where Derek waited. I parked nearby and approached on foot, keeping to shadows. Through the restaurant window, I could see them at a corner table, heads close together. They weren't even hiding their relationship anymore. I positioned myself where the restaurant's outdoor lighting would illuminate me momentarily when Vanessa looked out. Then I called her phone from a burner. She answered with an irritated, "Hello?" I said nothing, breathing softly. "Who is this?" Her voice sharpened. Still silent, I stood in the light, Landon's face clearly visible through the window. She looked up, phone still at her ear. Our eyes met. The color drained from her face. The phone slipped from her fingers. Derek turned to follow her gaze, but I'd already stepped back into darkness. By the time he looked outside, there was nothing to see. Through my surveillance earpiece, I heard her panicked words. It was him. It was Landon. He was standing right there. "That's impossible," Derek snapped, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "You're imagining things." "I know my husband's face," she hissed. "Your husband is dead," Derek reminded her harshly. "We made sure of it." A confession caught on my recording device. Another piece of evidence secured. I returned to my car as they argued, satisfied with the evening's work. Tomorrow would bring the next phase, confronting Derek on his boat before his meeting with Mortimer. By the time I finished my ghost act, they'd be ready to turn on each other. As I drove away, my phone pinged with an alert from Vanessa's apartment. The smart system showed someone entering. Someone who knew the code. I switched to the live feed just in time to see a tall figure in tactical gear methodically searching her rooms. Not Derek or Vanessa. Someone new had joined the game. I raced back to Vanessa's building, parked 2 blocks away, and approached on foot. The intruder in tactical gear could be another player in this deadly game or someone Mortimer had sent to clean house. Either way, I needed to know who they were. Through my phone, I watched the figure methodically searching the apartment, checking places no casual thief would consider, behind air vents, under floorboards, inside hollowed-out books. They moved with military precision, their gear unmarked but high quality. I entered through the service entrance and took the stairs, my footsteps silent from years of combat training. Reaching Vanessa's floor, I drew the compact Glock I'd acquired through old military connections. Not strictly legal, but neither was conspiring to murder my brother. The apartment door was slightly ajar. I listened for movement, then slipped inside, keeping to shadows. The intruder was in the bedroom, their back to me. Tall, broad-shouldered, clearly male. A tactical vest with multiple pockets. No visible identification. I aimed at his center mass. "Don't move." He froze, then slowly raised his hands. "Major Briggs, I presume." His voice was calm, professional. "Turn around." Slowly. He complied, revealing a weathered face with cold gray eyes. Late 40s, military bearing, a faded scar running along his jaw. "Tyler Reese. Former Delta. Now private security. Who hired you?" His lips curved into a humorless smile. "Same person who hired you, I imagine. The difference is I'm getting paid." I kept the gun steady. "No one hired me. My brother was murdered." "Your brother hired me." He lowered his hands slightly. 2 weeks before he died. The statement caught me off guard. Landon hiring a private mercenary made sense, but he'd never mentioned it. "Prove it." Tyler reached into his vest pocket, movements deliberately slow. He withdrew a folded paper and tossed it toward me. I caught it one-handed, keeping the gun trained on him. It was a bank transfer receipt with Landon's signature, dated 17 days ago. Payment to a security consulting firm called Aegis Solutions. He wanted surveillance on his wife and her friend, Tyler explained. Said he had evidence of financial irregularities but needed more. I was tracking them when he died. Convenient timing. For them, not for me. Dead clients don't pay final invoices. He nodded toward the gun. Mind pointing that elsewhere? We're on the same side. I lowered the weapon slightly. "What have you found?" "Plenty. Your brother's widow and her boyfriend meet regularly with Kevin Mortimer on his yacht. They've been moving money offshore through shell companies. And 3 days before your brother's accident, they met with a specialist in undetectable poisons at a private airfield. The pieces fit too well to be fabrication. Why are you here now?" "Kane and Mortimer are meeting tonight at an abandoned warehouse. I'm searching for anything that explains what Project Chimera actually is. Your brother was obsessed with it." I considered my options. Tyler could be another enemy, but his knowledge aligned with mine. In combat, unlikely alliances often determine survival. "I know what Chimera is," I lied, testing him. "The question is why they'd kill for it." Tyler's eyes narrowed. "If you knew, you wouldn't ask. But I've got a lead." He gestured to a laptop on the bed. "Found email fragments mentioning defective drone guidance systems. Military testing resulted in unacceptable collateral damage in Afghanistan." My blood chilled. 15 casualties. Soldiers reported as killed in action, yes. Your brother was connecting those deaths to Mortimer's company when he died. Before I could respond, our conversation was interrupted by the sound of voices in the hallway. Vanessa and Derek returning early. Tyler and I exchanged glances, both recognizing the tactical disadvantage. Back exit, he whispered. I nodded toward the balcony. We moved silently as the front door opened, slipping onto the balcony and closing the door behind us just as Vanessa entered the bedroom. Still don't understand why we had to leave, Derek was saying. You're jumping at shadows. It wasn't a shadow. It was Landon's face, clear as day. Landon is dead, Derek snapped. I watched him die. The cardiac toxin was untraceable, just like Mortimer promised. Tyler glanced at me, confirming we'd both heard the confession. He tapped his ear, indicating a recording device. Evidence secured. From our position on the balcony, we could see through the bedroom window. Derek paced while Vanessa sat heavily on the bed. Mortimer wants all evidence destroyed before tomorrow's Pentagon inspection, Derek continued. If they discover the drone failures were covered up. I know what's at stake, Vanessa interrupted. $300 million in contracts, plus our cut. Plus potential prison time if we're caught, Derek added grimly. Mortimer made it clear, we're all in this together. His money, my technical knowledge, your access to Landon. Your access to me, you mean? Vanessa corrected with a cold smile. 5 years of planning, all for this payday. I didn't spend 3 years pretending to love that self-righteous Boy Scout for nothing. I felt a surge of anger at the casual dismissal of my brother's life. Tyler placed a warning hand on my arm, shaking his head slightly. Now wasn't the time. We silently descended the fire escape as the conversation continued above us. At ground level, Tyler turned to me. You need my help, he stated flatly. And I need yours. Why would you help me? Your brother paid half my fee. I always finish the job. His expression hardened. Besides, I lost friends to those equipment malfunctions in Afghanistan. I made my decision. The warehouse meeting tonight. We'll be there. Tyler nodded. Bring your ghost costume. Time to really scare them. The abandoned warehouse loomed against the night sky, its weathered exterior illuminated only by distant street lamps and the occasional sweep of headlights from the highway. Tyler and I observed from a rooftop across the street, our position giving us a clear view of all approaches. Mortimer arrives with at least 2 security personnel at all meetings, Tyler explained, adjusting his night vision scope. Former military, armed. Professional, not thugs. I nodded, applying the final touches to my Landon disguise. The silicone mask felt like a second skin, molded perfectly to my features. Rules of engagement? Surveillance only, Tyler replied. We need concrete evidence linking Mortimer to the drone failures and Landon's murder. A recording of them discussing Project Chimera should do it. And if things go sideways? Tyler smiled thinly. Then we improvise. Military style. A black SUV with tinted windows approached the warehouse, followed by a silver Audi, Derek's car. Tyler tracked them through his scope as they parked and the occupants emerged. Mortimer plus 2 security, he confirmed. Kane alone. We watched as they entered through a side door, then moved silently across rooftops until we reached the warehouse. A skylight offered both visual and audio access, another stroke of luck in a mission that needed it. We secured ropes and descended to positions flanking the skylight. Below, Mortimer sat at a folding table, his expensive suit out of place in the decrepit setting. He was older than in the photographs, his silver hair immaculately styled, his bearing that of someone accustomed to power. Derek stood opposite him, visibly nervous. Becoming a problem, Mortimer was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the partially open skylight. The Pentagon inspection team includes General Hammond. He personally lost men to the guidance system failures. The technical documentation shows enemy fire, not system failures, Derek replied. I altered the logs myself. Mortimer waved dismissively. Documentation can be questioned. Especially when someone keeps stirring things up. He fixed Derek with a cold stare. First Landon Briggs starts investigating. We handle him, then his brother appears. Now these incidents, flowers, sightings, messages. Either Landon left evidence behind or someone else knows. Vanessa's just paranoid, Derek insisted. Seeing things. Landon is dead. Are you certain? The body was cremated rather quickly at your suggestion. Derek paled. The toxin was untraceable but not foolproof. Cremation eliminated any risk of detection. And now his brother is asking questions about Project Chimera. Mortimer drummed his fingers on the table. The contract renewal comes up next month. $300 million, Kane. If this falls apart, you won't just lose your share. You'll be the fall guy. I exchanged glances with Tyler, who nodded. We were getting everything we needed on his recording devices. What about Vanessa? Derek asked. What about her? Mortimer's voice turned dismissive. She served her purpose. 5 years ago she was the perfect plant, beautiful, intelligent, and absolutely amoral. Exactly what we needed to get close to an incorruptible man like Landon. My jaw tightened beneath the silicone mask. They'd been planning this for 5 years? Before Landon even met Vanessa? She expects her full share, Derek said. She'll get what I decide she deserves, Mortimer replied coldly. Now about the brother. My sources say he hasn't left town. Find him, handle it, make it look unrelated to Landon's death. Another accident? Heart condition. Family history. Tragic but not suspicious. Mortimer stood, signaling the end of the meeting. I want this resolved before the Pentagon team arrives tomorrow. It was time for the ghost to make an appearance. I caught Tyler's eye and tapped my watch. He nodded, understanding the plan we'd discussed earlier. As Mortimer and Derek moved toward the exit, Tyler triggered the warehouse's ancient electrical system using a remote hack. The lights flickered then died completely. In the sudden darkness, Mortimer's security drew weapons. What the hell? Derek's voice echoed through the space. I slipped through the skylight, descending silently on the rope until I hung suspended 15 feet above them. Tyler activated a small spotlight, illuminating me from below, Landon's face hovering in the darkness like an apparition. You killed me, Derek, I said, using the voice modulator to perfectly match Landon's tone. Did you think I wouldn't know? That I wouldn't come back? The effect was instantaneous. Derek stumbled backward, his face contorted in terror. Mortimer's security fired 2 shots that whistled past me, but Tyler's spotlight made aiming difficult. This is impossible, Mortimer hissed, remarkably composed despite the situation. Kane, pull yourself together. But Derek was beyond reasoning, pointing up at my suspended form. It's him. It's Briggs. Project Chimera will be exposed, I continued, my voice echoing through the warehouse. The 15 dead soldiers. Your tampered drones. The blood money. I slowly rotated, the spotlight creating shifting shadows across my face. Confess or join me in death. Chaos erupted below. Derek bolted for the exit, Mortimer's security firing wildly into the rafters. Tyler cut my line, dropping me onto a prepositioned platform while simultaneously killing the spotlight. In the darkness, I quickly made my way to our exit point as planned. Outside, Tyler was waiting in our vehicle. That, he said with grudging respect as I removed the mask, was quite a performance. Did you get what we needed? He held up his recording device. Everything. Plus their reactions to your ghost act. Priceless. They'll be desperate now, I said, starting the engine. Desperate people make mistakes. Tyler nodded grimly. Or they become more dangerous. Mortimer won't run, too much money at stake. He'll eliminate any threats. Good, I replied, pulling onto the road. Because I'm counting on him coming after me next. Dawn broke over the city as we finalized our plan in the motel room I'd rented under a false name. Tyler had contacts who could analyze the drone guidance system specifications we'd recovered from Landon's files, confirming what we already suspected. The failures weren't accidents but deliberate design flaws that saved Mortimer's company millions in production costs. Mortimer would have had to sign off on these changes personally, Tyler said, examining the technical documents on his laptop. The failure rate was predictable, 1 in 20 deployments. Meaning they knew soldiers would die, I said, the anger I'd been controlling threatening to surface. They calculated the risk. 15 deaths against 300 million in profit. Tyler's expression hardened. Corporate math. My phone buzzed with an alert from the surveillance system in Vanessa's apartment. She was awake, pacing frantically while speaking on her phone. He's turned on all of us, she said, her voice pitched high with panic. Derek's completely lost it, babbling about seeing Landon's ghost at the warehouse. We couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but her responses painted a clear picture. I don't care what Mortimer says. This is falling apart. She paused, listening. No, I won't meet you. Derek's convinced Landon is haunting us, and Mortimer thinks we're a liability. Another pause. Because I'm not stupid. He'll eliminate us to protect himself. When she hung up, she immediately began packing a suitcase, pulling clothing from drawers with frantic energy. She's running, Tyler observed. Perfect timing for our divide and conquer strategy, I replied, reaching for my phone. She gets a warning about Derek, Derek gets a warning about her. I sent a text to Derek from an anonymous number. She ordered your elimination. Check her recent calls. She's working with Mortimer to cut you out. You have 2 hours. To Vanessa, a different message. Derek is meeting with Mortimer at noon to discuss cleanup. First you, then the evidence. They never planned to share the money. Tyler raised an eyebrow. Simple but effective. People believe what they already fear is true, I replied, a lesson from psychological warfare training. Now we wait. It took less than 30 minutes for the trap to spring. My surveillance alert showed Derek arriving at Vanessa's apartment, his movements agitated, aggressive. I activated the audio feed. Going somewhere? Derek demanded, gesturing at her half-packed suitcase. Just a short trip. Clear my head. Vanessa's tone was carefully neutral, but her body language betrayed her tension. After calling Mortimer? Planning something without me? Her expression flickered with surprise before hardening. I could ask you the same. Your little noon meeting today? Derek's confusion seemed genuine. What meeting? Don't lie to me. I know about the cleanup plan. She stepped back, reaching subtly toward a drawer that, according to my earlier surveillance, contained a small handgun. There's no meeting, Derek insisted. But there was a call from you to Mortimer at 5 this morning. My phone was charging in the kitchen at 5. I was asleep. They stared at each other, the realization dawning simultaneously that they'd been manipulated. Derek glanced around the apartment, suddenly wary. We're being played, he said quietly. By who? Mortimer? I don't know. But last night. Derek lowered his voice. I saw Landon. Hanging in the air above us. He spoke. Vanessa's face paled. That's impossible. I know what I saw. Derek's composure cracked. He knew about the toxin, about the drone failures. Things only Landon would know. You're losing your mind, Vanessa hissed, though fear edged her voice. Landon is dead. You killed him. I injected him, yes. The toxin Mortimer provided should have been untraceable. Tyler and I exchanged glances. Another confession recorded. The evidence was mounting. Should have been? Vanessa's voice rose. What are you saying? I'm saying something's wrong. The ghost, the messages, someone knows everything. Derek ran a hand through his hair. We need to disappear. Now, before Mortimer decides we're expendable. Vanessa's expression shifted from fear to calculation. You're right. We take what we can and go. The offshore account, Derek nodded. 5 million already transferred. Mortimer still owes us 5 more, Vanessa said. For Project Chimera. Forget it. We disappear with what we have. The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Both froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Are you expecting someone? Derek whispered. Vanessa shook her head, reaching for the drawer with the gun. Before she could open it, the door burst open, revealing 2 of Mortimer's security personnel, weapons drawn. Mr. Mortimer requests your presence, the leader announced coldly. Derek backed away. We were just coming to see him. I'm sure you were. The security man smiled without humor. The car is waiting. As they were escorted out, Tyler turned to me. Mortimer's tying up loose ends. He's bringing them to his estate, I said, having researched the location. Private, secure, perfect for resolving problems permanently. So what now? I reached for the Landon mask. Now we crash the party. It's time Mortimer met the ghost face to face. Tyler checked his weapons. This isn't just about evidence anymore, is it? It never was, I replied, securing the mask to my face. This is about justice. For Landon. For those 15 soldiers. No more ghosts, no more shadows. Just the truth, Tyler nodded, understanding in his eyes. Let's finish this. Mortimer's estate stretched across 30 acres of prime coastal property, a modern fortress disguised as a luxury residence. High walls, security cameras, and a private dock where his yacht was moored. Getting in undetected would require more than military training, it would take a ghost. 3 entry points, Tyler said, reviewing satellite imagery on his tablet as we parked a mile from the estate. Main gate, service entrance, and the waterfront. All monitored. What about aerial? I asked, studying the layout. Tyler pointed to the northwest corner. Helipad. Minimal coverage on approach since the property backs up to protected forest land. We go in low through the trees, I decided. I'll wear the Landon mask. You secure our exit route. Tyler nodded, checking his equipment one last time. Mortimer has 4 security personnel on rotation. Armed, ex-military. Not our target, I reminded him. We get evidence, not bodies. The trek through the forest was silent, methodical. Years of combat operations had taught us both how to move like shadows. As we approached the estate's perimeter, I activated the compact thermal scanner borrowed from Tyler's extensive collection. 3 heat signatures in the main house, I whispered. 1 in the pool house, likely security. Vanessa and Derek? Can't tell. But there's activity in the boathouse by the dock. 2 more signatures. Tyler checked his watch. Pentagon inspection team arrives at the base in 4 hours. Whatever Mortimer's planning, it happens before then. We split up, Tyler moving toward the security systems junction box while I circled to approach from the water side. My earpiece crackled with his voice. Security camera loop activated. You have 12 minutes before automated reset. I slipped onto the grounds, keeping to landscape shadows until I reached the boathouse. Through a window, I could see Mortimer standing over Derek, who was tied to a chair. Vanessa was nearby, not bound but clearly not free to leave, one of Mortimer's guards standing close behind her. Never intended to betray you, Derek was saying, blood trickling from his lip. The ghost, it wasn't real. Someone's playing us. Playing you, perhaps, Mortimer replied coldly. Your incompetence has jeopardized everything. The brother is still investigating, the Pentagon team arrives today, and somehow Landon's research has resurfaced. We can fix this, Vanessa pleaded, her composed facade cracking. The offshore accounts are secure. The evidence is contained. Is it? Mortimer turned to her. Then explain this. He held up a familiar flash drive, Landon's drive. Found in your apartment safe. The one you claimed was empty. Vanessa's face paled. That's impossible. I checked it myself after Landon died. Yet here it is, with complete documentation of Project Chimera's failures and my company's cover-up. Mortimer's voice was dangerously calm. Someone's been manipulating events. The flowers, the sightings, the messages, all designed to make you paranoid, to turn you against each other. Derek looked up, understanding dawning. Grayson. Landon's brother. A major with special forces training, Mortimer nodded. Capable of psychological warfare tactics. He's been playing us from the beginning. It was time to make my entrance. I activated the voice modulator and stepped into view. Not from the beginning, I said in Landon's voice. Only since you murdered me. The effect was electric. Derek jerked so violently he nearly toppled his chair. Vanessa screamed, backing against the wall. Only Mortimer maintained his composure, though his face drained of color. This is a trick, he declared, though uncertainty tinged his voice. Is it? I moved forward, letting the dim boathouse lighting enhance the ghostly effect of Landon's face. Project Chimera killed 15 soldiers. My investigation threatened your contract. So you planted Vanessa years ago, knowing I'd investigate eventually. Mortimer's security drew weapons, but he waved them down, studying me intently. Impressive performance. But ghosts don't cast shadows. Neither do murderers with government connections, I replied. You've bought protection, but not from me. Derek, sensing an opportunity, struggled against his restraints. It was Mortimer's plan. He ordered the sabotage, the cover-up, everything. Shut up, Kane, Mortimer snapped. He supplied the toxin. Derek continued desperately. Said it would look like natural causes. Vanessa, seeing which way the wind was blowing, joined in. I was recruited 5 years ago. Mortimer said it was corporate espionage, nothing more. I never agreed to murder. The betrayals were cascading exactly as I'd hoped. In their panic, they were providing all the confessions we needed. Mortimer, recognizing the same, drew a concealed pistol and aimed it at Vanessa. Enough. One more word, Anne. I moved forward, closing the distance between us. And what? More killing? How many bodies before it's enough? Stay back. Mortimer ordered, swinging the weapon toward me. Ghost or not, a bullet will stop you. You're right. I reached up and slowly peeled away the silicone mask, revealing my true face. I'm not a ghost. I'm what comes after justice. The shock was palpable. Mortimer's aim faltered momentarily. Major Briggs. In the flesh, I confirmed. And you've just confessed to murder, conspiracy, and treason while being recorded. It's over, Mortimer. He smiled thinly, regaining his composure. Nothing is over. Do you know who I am? The connections I have? Senators, generals, cabinet members, all in my pocket. Maybe, I acknowledged. But even they can't ignore 15 dead soldiers and recorded confessions. Mortimer's finger tightened on the trigger. We'll see about that. The tension in the boathouse hung like a physical presence as Mortimer's finger tightened on the trigger. Time seemed to stretch, each second extending into eternity. I kept my eyes locked on his, showing no fear. Even you're not foolish enough to add another murder to your record, I said calmly. Not with so many witnesses. Mortimer's cold smile never wavered. Witnesses can disappear. Recordings can be destroyed. You underestimate my reach, Major? And you underestimate mine, I replied. On cue, the boathouse doors burst open. Tyler entered with his weapon drawn, followed by 4 military police officers in full tactical gear. Kevin Mortimer, the lead officer, announced, "You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud against the United States government, and accessory to murder." Mortimer's security personnel hesitated, weapons half raised, caught in an impossible situation. Their training told them to protect their employer, but their instincts recognized the futility of engaging military police. "Stand down," Mortimer ordered them, his voice tight with controlled rage. Slowly, deliberately, he placed his weapon on the ground. "This is a misunderstanding that will be cleared up with one phone call." The MP captain approached, securing Mortimer's hands behind his back. "Your phones have been busy, sir." The Pentagon inspection team received copies of Project Chimera documentation an hour ago. General Hammond is particularly interested in the connection to the 15 soldiers who died under his command. Mortimer's composure finally cracked, his face contorting with fury as he turned to me. "You have no idea what you've done. The technologies we developed, the advancements, worth far more than 15 expendable soldiers." "Each of those soldiers had a name," I replied quietly. "Each had family. They weren't expendable. They were my brothers in arms." As the MPs secured Mortimer, another team entered to take Derek into custody. He offered no resistance, his earlier bravado replaced by resignation. "Vanessa Briggs," the captain continued, "you're also under arrest as an accessory to murder and conspiracy." Vanessa straightened her shoulders, somehow maintaining her dignity even as handcuffs were secured around her wrists. "I want immunity," she declared. "I have information about Mortimer's entire operation. Names, dates, offshore accounts." "That's for the prosecutors to decide," the captain replied. "But cooperation is always noted." As they were led away, Tyler approached, holstering his weapon. "Military police received an anonymous package this morning. Full documentation of Project Chimera, witness statements from contractor whistleblowers, financial records. Everything needed to connect Mortimer to both the failed drone systems and Landon's murder." "Anonymous, huh?" I smiled slightly. "Convenient timing." "I have helpful friends," Tyler shrugged. "People who lost comrades to those equipment malfunctions in Afghanistan. They'd been waiting for justice." We watched as the 3 conspirators were placed in separate vehicles. Mortimer's face was a mask of cold calculation, already planning his defense, no doubt. Derek looked broken, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. But it was Vanessa who captured my attention, her eyes meeting mine with a complex mixture of defiance and something almost like respect. "What happens now?" I asked the MP captain. "Full investigation. Military tribunal for the contract fraud and equipment failures. Civilian court for the murder charges." He shook my hand firmly. "Your brother would be proud, Major." After the vehicles departed, Tyler and I walked the grounds of Mortimer's estate, now swarming with investigators collecting evidence. "You did good, Briggs," Tyler said. "Not everyone could have pulled this off." "I had help," I acknowledged. "Not just from you." Landon left breadcrumbs everywhere, knowing I'd follow them. "Brothers," Tyler nodded knowingly. "The strongest bond there is." 1 year later, I stood alone at Arlington National Cemetery, the autumn leaves drifting around Landon's grave. The military had acknowledged the true circumstances of his death, awarding him posthumous honors for his investigation into Project Chimera. The ceremony had been attended by families of the 15 soldiers who had died because of Mortimer's faulty drones. Mortimer's trial had revealed a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of defense procurement. 3 generals and a deputy secretary had resigned in disgrace. Vanessa, true to form, had negotiated a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony that unraveled an entire network of corruption. 25 years instead of life. Derek hadn't been so fortunate, receiving life without parole for administering the poison that killed Landon. I placed a small object on the white headstone. Landon's challenge coin, the one I'd left on Derek's boat during my ghost campaign. Justice served, little brother, I said softly, the cool breeze carrying my words across the immaculate grounds. All the ghosts can rest now. Using Landon's life insurance money, rightfully returned after Vanessa's conviction, I'd established a foundation to support families of soldiers lost to equipment failures in combat zones. A living memorial that would continue Landon's work of protecting those who served. As I turned to leave, the setting sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the cemetery. For just a moment, I could have sworn I saw Landon's silhouette walking beside mine, not a ghost of vengeance anymore but a brother at peace. No more shadows, I whispered. Only truth.